Welcome to the A Minute to Midnight show, folks, on this crazy week, which I think is going to get things much, much crazier in the future. And on the line with me, I have John Haller. Welcome, John.
Good to be back with you again, Tony. Things have changed a little bit since I don't know when it was, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago that we talked.
Things have changed incredibly. You never would have picked it. And I'm just looking at an article Michael Snyder put out an hour or two ago. We just witnessed the largest single-day stock market point crash in history again. It has happened again on Thursday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 2,352 points, which was the largest single-day stock market point crash in history. Of course, the old record only lasted for 3 days because on Monday the Dow dropped 2,013 points, and on Wednesday we actually witnessed the third largest single-day stock market point crash in history. So the 3 worst days in the history of the US stock market on a point basis have all happened this week. On a percentage basis, the stunning decline that we witnessed on Thursday was the worst day for the Dow since the horrifying market crash of 1987. Wall Street is in a tremendous state of panic right now, and nobody is quite sure when this will end. Needless to say, this frenzy of selling is being driven by fear of the coronavirus.
Somebody sent me a screenshot. They were watching the market yesterday, and I don't seem to have it handy, but at about 3:15 yesterday when the market hit its low and officially entered bear territory, one of the indexes was down 1,660 points, and the percentage of the market was down at the exact same time was 6.66%. It was just kind of one of those interesting coincidences. I'll chalk it up to a coincidence.
Yeah, but, maybe. Are there any coincidences in these things?
Well, they say coincidence isn't a kosher word. Don't they say that in Israel? So I don't even know where to begin with all the things that are sort of happening here. Meetings banned, sports leagues are all canceled. I'm going to have to start talking to my wife again, I guess, because there won't be any sports to watch on TV. And I say that jokingly, of course. NCAA tournament's done. The NBA is done. Major League Baseball's delaying the start of their season a month or two. The NHL is stopped. The National Hockey League has stopped their season. And as one person noted, hockey players essentially play in the functional equivalent of a hazmat suit. They have the helmet and the face mask and gloves, giant gloves, and they're covered head to foot, and they're canceling. But of course, they're canceling because of concerns about the fans coming out and exposing themselves to one another. These things are they're unprecedented. They've never happened before. It's never happened before.
Yeah. And the thing is, going back to Michael's article, he said, we still don't know if this is going to evolve into a major pandemic that's going to kill millions of people. Right now, there are less than 1,400 confirmed cases in the US and less than 100 deaths. If we're witnessing that much panic now, what will happen if millions of people die? And actually, just to update that US number, it's already grown since he put that article out. According to the Worldometers, it's now 1636 just before I started this show, with 40 deaths. So that is an awful lot of people growing quickly. That's a plus 335 new American cases. So far, New Zealand, we've only had...
I hadn't even seen that. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, that's only just 10, 15 minutes before I started recording. New Zealand, we still only got 5 cases confirmed and no new ones for about 5 days, actually. But, boy, it's going ballistic everywhere. Looking at, say, Italy from those Worldometers, 15,113, that's plus 2,651 new ones with 1,016 deaths. Interesting though, South Korea is still a total opposite in a way to what's happening in Italy, because they've got 7,869 cases with only 66 deaths.
Well,
So,
there's probably a reason for that. In that, when they talk about the risk factors in the people more likely to die, older males and smokers are probably the highest risk category.
yeah,
And there's an aging population in Seoul, in Korea. They have a lot of smokers. But the one thing that they do is, and I think part of this is because of where they're located next to a mortal enemy. So they have prepared for a long time for a major influx into their healthcare system. And so they probably, there's some thinking right now. I just was listening to a doctor um, I think I had Fox on while I was grabbing a bite to eat. And he said that getting oxygen to people early on is very important. So in countries where you see a higher incident of death or a higher death rate, like China, like Iran, and like Italy, they don't have the healthcare delivery system. They're not prepared for that influx, particularly in having available oxygen and intensive care units like they have in South Korea, because South Korea is prepared for a long time as if they're going to be invaded with a massive war and massive casualty events from North Korea. So there's probably a logical explanation for why Korea is doing better, South Korea is doing better. Although I don't think that logic necessarily enters into much of the discussion here today, as I've kind of watched my Facebook feed and other things. There's a lot of raw emotion, denial, and overhyping.
I tell you what, talking about denial, I think I've noticed the nitwits that still think Q is legitimate are jumping on this whole thing and thinking this is the beginning of the storm. Like that they've been expecting all the time that Trump's going to do is whatever. We talked about all those indictments a million times, but apparently. On the Hill the other day, the article, Nero trends after meme Trump retweeted himself playing violin likened to Nero fiddling as Rome burns. On Sunday, Trump promoted the meme, which was initially shared by the White House social media director Dan Scavino, that depicted him calmly smiling as he played the violin. The meme was captioned, "My next piece is called Nothing Can Stop What's Coming." When Trump retweeted the post, he wrote, "Who knows what this means, but it sounds good to me." And then, of course, the Washington Post has said, noted that's "Nothing Can Stop What's Coming" is what QAnon has used as a phrase. So now they're saying, this is it. So they don't get it. They just don't get it.
It is, I don't think, as I've sort of sat back and tried to look at this dispassionately, it's having an impact. So, for example, I work in a big office building downtown. We have about 2/3 of the floor. I'm on one half of the floor with about 12 other people. And yesterday, I was the only one there for 3/4 of the day on that side of the building. That's just never happened before. And I think out of 12 attorneys, there was maybe one other attorney in the office. So it's having an impact. I think people don't know what to do. But the one thing that I'm noticing, Tony, is that I don't think I've ever seen anything in my life. I talk a lot about eschatology, and everybody has an opinion about where the Antichrist will come from, when does the rapture happen, and all of these different things. But I don't think I've ever seen more divisive opinions about something than I've seen about the current environment. For example, you will have some people say, it's nothing, this is just like the cold, it's just the flu kills more people, it's nothing to be worried about. I can't believe it. Then you have other people that say, oh, if you're going out to buy food or toilet paper or whatever to prepare, you're panicking, you're overwrought, you're not trusting the Lord and all of this stuff. And then there are other people that think this is the end of the world. This is one of the seals of Revelation that's upon us. I don't think any of those positions are correct. I think the more reasoned position, and I don't usually cite him because his language is bad, but Joe Rogan had a doctor on today on his podcast today or yesterday, and I thought it was a very calm, reasoned discussion. We don't know where it's going. We don't know how bad it's going to be. So, for example, somebody posted that Tom Hanks and his wife had been diagnosed or test was positive for coronavirus. And they posted on their Facebook or Twitter accounts that they're fine. Well, they're fine now, but what are they going to be fine in 4 or 5 days? So everybody, it seems like people are out there grasping at what makes them feel good about themselves or their opinion. And look, I'm a trial lawyer, and I tell young trial lawyers the worst thing you can do is believe everything your client tells you. You know, you have to vet the facts. You have to go where the facts lead. It does you and your client no good to come to a conclusion and then only interpret everything through that grid. You do have to be somewhat open-minded. So it's really hard to do. So as someone who's older, I'm 66, I'm sort of on the edge of a high-risk category. I'm trying to be careful. And in the way I'm coming to a conclusion, because I don't know how this thing is going to play out right now. I will say that regardless of the health thing, and how that's going to play out, this has clearly exposed the problem with supply chains and just-in-time inventory that we have in the world today. Because those of us who've studied this, you mentioned Michael Snyder, he's talked about this for years. I have talked about it for years, that at some point there's going to be a blip in the world economy, and it's all going to come crashing down. And certainly we are at least at the leading edge of that happening. I don't know if this slows down. I think we are months away at a minimum from any kind of resolution of the thing, if it is ever resolved.
Yeah, I find it hard to see it coming back from here without a full-blown economic collapse, but I'm hoping that's not the case. However, to me, that looks what's happening, and I'm going to say it. Going back to the idiots that think that Trump is there somehow going to win this battle through the whole Q stuff. I've said it since before Trump was elected. He's going to be there when the economic collapse happens. I've believed that all the way, and this is what's playing out. And I just can't see it changing. Going to another angle too, I noticed that the paper markets for the precious metals are being knocked down as well, which also is completely in line with what I've expected. That's what's happening at the same time as the US Mint, another 1 million Silver Eagles were sold over the past 2 days. That brings the total number of Silver Eagle sales in March, this is a couple of days ago, or yesterday, to 2.3 million, which is more than 3 times the previous month. There is going to come a day when the paper market disconnects from the physical metals market. And I firmly believe that the precious metal prices are going to go to the moon, the real stuff, once the disconnect between the two markets happens. But this is exactly what I've been expecting. So don't be surprised, folks, if you are holding precious metals, that you see the price going down in the next little while, because I think it will until that disconnect happens, and then you're going to be glad you're holding on to them. So I just wanted to say that, because this fits perfectly with a dream I had a few years ago. What I'm seeing unfold now is unfolding exactly like my dream, unfortunately, which is not, I don't normally think I'm not, prophetically saying I'm prophetic or whatever. People can take it as what they want, but unfortunately, this is playing out like my dream. So I'm taking very close notice of it.
Yeah, but look, as somebody who's sort of tied into the banking sector with the type of work that I do as a lawyer, um, I've thought something like this is coming for a long time. I
Mm.
mean, I'm going to guess 5 years,
Yeah.
because what they did in 2008 and quantitative easing and printing money and uh, all of these things that they did to prop up the economy. I will give them credit for being incredibly clever, but they started kicking a can down the
Yeah.
road. Now they're trying to push a giant barrel
Yeah.
down the road and not have it run over and come rolling back down the hill and crush them.
Yeah.
I think is the best way to say it. So it is it's a very turbulent time. There's just no doubt about that. And so I thought this collapse was coming for some time. And like you, my feeling was that they would somehow, at least in the initial stages, they would suppress the price of metals.
Yep.
And they seem to be doing that.
Yep.
Although I did talk to a friend who is in the, I don't know how else to describe it without being pejorative. He is in the junk business. And what his business does is he buys catalytic converters from junk cars, and they then, I guess, melt them down and extract the because there's some very valuable metals in those catalytic converters. There's I think palladium, platinum, rhodium, or some metal like that that's very rare. And what he told me a week ago was that the price of those metals had gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Because they're rare earth metals. They're very valuable at any time, but particularly right now, he said they're just exploding. And told me some stories about buying some things, and I probably shouldn't share what he said, but pretty incredible that. And he said, what if you're on the right side of the market, you could make more in a week than you've made in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
If you're on the wrong side of the market, you're going to get slaughtered.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen here. So personally, I pulled out of the market a little while ago. Missed a big run up. Okay. But, today I'm sort of even with everybody, I think, as to where it was when I pulled out. So, I'm sure I would like to have had more money, but that I'm not. I think 90% of investors don't do very well anyway. They'd just be better to sit their money someplace and leave it.
Yeah, I totally think right now, while there's a chance that the things that people should be doing is first and foremost, is stocking up on food and essential supplies to live for as long as they can afford to do it. And B, if you can, buy precious metals, especially silver. It's ridiculously cheap while you still can, because there's going to come a time when you're not going to be able to. Forget about what the price is, actually. I think it's irrelevant what the price today is. Either way, going up, going down, it's not going to bear any reality to what's coming. And I think precious metals are a huge thing to have, but obviously food, water, shelter, and those things are the number one priority. And I don't think people should wait and hold off. I think now's the time to do it while there is still a chance.
Yeah, I'm just sort of sitting here while we're talking, playing with the different Dow Jones and different indexes. And if you look at a 1 day or even 5 day change in the market on the graph, it doesn't look too bad. But when you go to 3 months or 6 months or a year, it's like, holy cow,
Yeah.
What is going on? So it is.
Well, it's fallen since.
It's going to be a turbulent time.
Yeah, it's fallen well over 20% now, I think, since February, since the high in February. I mean, we're down to, on the Dow is like, I don't know, I don't have the figure exactly in front of me. It's like 21,000 odd points. It was up at 29. That's a huge fall. And tomorrow, I think we're going to see another probably big crash day. And if that's the case, everyone will be trying to get out on Monday.
Yeah, They halted trading twice this week because the market dropped. I think I forget what the number is, 7%. There's curbs that are put in to get everybody to kind of calm down.
Yeah.
And then they came back, and it kind of went up a little bit, and then it came down, because I think there's a reality that people are looking at as to what's really going on. And investors want to know for certain. The thing that sort of, I think your advice is very good. I think if you're not preparing to be stuck inside for 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever, as much as you can afford it, I think you need to do it. In some respects, it may be too late.
Yeah.
There are things that really concern me. I was reading some statistics today that because of the shutdown in China, 40% of the fields that would normally be planted at this time of year for their food there have not been planted yet. They're way behind.
Yeah. Wow.
You layer on top of that the bad weather year that we had here in the Midwest, all the way down through the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys last year. It was a disaster. And I do some farm banking related farm work, or farm related banking work, I guess I should say. And it's bad. I mean, I was just reading an article yesterday. There have been hundreds of farmers commit suicide in the U.S. over the past 2 years. It's something they've never seen this happen before. There's a sense of despair. So from what the people I've talked to in the banking sector, they're saying that, listen, last year was bad. The crash in farming happens this year, even if it's a good year. So I would say, again, it's how many of these things, Tony, do we pile on top of each other till we really have a problem? And so that is why I'm sure it's irritating to you as it is irritating to me for people to act like, well, this is all going to be okay in a week and go away. This is not going to be okay in a week.
Yeah.
And I would love, you sort of get the picture as I watch people talk about this. Now I understand why the prosperity gospel guys are so popular, because they're always telling people what they want to hear.
Yes.
You're going to be healed. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah. God's going to smile on you with favor. It's different dosage strengths that people give you this nonsense, this pablum.
Yeah.
And so people latch onto that. They like to hear that. So it's not popular to be the Johnny Downer, to say, like, we're entering a time, and depending on where you think we are on the prophetic timeline, it's getting increasingly difficult to say, hey, this is all going to be okay. I don't know that it's going to be okay. I mean, and so we have the coronavirus, we have the economic collapse, and we have an oil price war that's been started by Saudi Arabia and Russia. And now I can take you to the east of here, eastern Ohio, and western Pennsylvania, and the shale oil stuff over there has helped the economy over there immeasurably. But now the oil price is down so low, you're going to see shale oil producers going into bankruptcy in abundance over the next few months. If this does not turn around immediately, they're down. They're way down now. So it's the Saudi, so I don't know what oil price was today. I saw it down around $27, maybe got rallied back up to 34. Saudi Arabia, to pay what they need to pay to support all of those princes that they have, and then the social welfare payments that they make to people to kind of keep them under control in Saudi Arabia, they need oil at $90 a barrel. They're not going to make it at 34. They can pump. Well, they probably have the lowest cost to produce in the world, but still they have a cost to produce. And at some point it hurts them. And Russia, goodness, that's bad news for Russia. That's 35% of their gross domestic product comes from oil and gas. And it's probably higher than that, but it's hurting them too. So there's sort of a game of chicken going on between Putin and Mohammed bin Salman. And the question is, who's going to win that? Who's going to blink first? And right now, I think Saudi Arabia has the upper hand. So that it causes turmoil. I mean, this is part of the reason why Iran can't afford to take care of their people as the coronavirus sort of sweeps through Iranian society and the population there, because they're under sanctions and they don't have the money in cash to do this. It's it's impossible to sort of talk about this and just say, well, here's one thing, and we can just talk about one thing. We, used to be able to keep some of your thoughts in these silos, and now the silos have collapsed, and everything's just a big pile, and it's hard to dig your way through. I guess that's the best way to think about it.
Yeah, everything's interconnected in a big way. All of these things happening at the same time is just like I believe the Bible predicts the end times will be. Jesus told us to look for these signs.
And actually, the sequence that Jesus talks about, the pestilence, the famine, the economic collapse, or whatever order he has them in, you see it playing out right in front of you. Now, I'm not saying that this is the actual thing that's prophesied for the actual time of the end, but sure, a picture of it. You can't deny that.
Yeah, and it may very well be that this is that time. It's way too big. It's like nothing that's ever happened in our lifetimes anyway. And the way the world is so interconnected now, there's kind of no going back to just living like the 1800s or 19th century people did. We don't have the skills, most people, or, everything is driven by electricity and fossil fuels and different things like that. You can just see when this all really unfolds, I just can see many people dying. And not just from the coronavirus. Actually, talking about that, the Prime Minister of the UK, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, said families would continue to lose loved ones before their time as the coronavirus outbreak worsens. We've all got to be clear this is the worst public health crisis for a generation. That is what Boris Johnson said. And I agree, but it's like that's only just one aspect. Everything flows together.
And I see the Fed pumped $1 trillion in today, but how long can they continue?
Well, it only lasted 30 minutes before the stock market rallied for 30 minutes. The Fed did that, and then it was back crashing again. That probably should be telling people that they're kind of the ammunition they've used in the past isn't going to work this time.
They will do it. I see even Mount Everest is shut down, climbing.
Okay.
Over the coronavirus fears.
Well,
so
another person I have on my show fairly regularly, I won't mention his name because I didn't ask him if I could, but he's just told me this morning that the firm that he works for in the US, which employs, I think he said 10,000 people, have all been told to work from home. So he was there in his place of work clearing out his stuff to take home so he can work from home. So that's a big thing, 10,000 people.
Well, and that's my fear is that that's going to put pressure on the bandwidth on the internet. I think there are already some indicators that that's becoming a bit of a problem. So I don't know if that had anything to do with the bad connection we had initially tonight, but there's only so much bandwidth out there. I wish I had a crystal ball. I could tell you that it's all going to be okay, but I don't think it's okay. But, I'm I'm sort of strangely calm about it. I'm not panicked. I detest the rhetoric that I'm seeing. I think I mentioned earlier that if, people saying, oh, if you're going out and buying food and everything, you're just panicking. Well, that's not panicking. In Proverbs 6 and Proverbs 30, it talks about even the ants make preparation when they have time. So I think that maybe that's a good example. The proverb says it's a good example for you to follow, for people to follow. So I think it's the wise thing to do. But my wife went out today and she said she went to a Sam's Club, which is a big discount warehouse store, run by the Walmart people. And she said it was total gridlock in this giant warehouse, that you couldn't move your carts because there are so many people there buying things. And they were out of a lot of stuff. Now, I think there's still enough stuff in the pipeline to keep it going for a while, but I don't know how long. I mean, the pictures I see of container ports and ships and looking at the shipping indexes and that type of things, those have all collapsed. And I don't know how much China has recovered in terms of production. That's not very clear at the moment. And I don't know that you can believe much of anything you hear coming out of China anyway.
No, I don't think so either. You can't really trust them. I tell you what, there's another interesting article I saw today, which was an opinion piece on a New Zealand website. The opinion piece says this: travel ban. 2 weeks ago, I would have laughed at you. New Zealand could become a lifeboat to save humanity from extinction if there was a catastrophic pandemic, according to a report predating the coronavirus that was published published by Otago University in October. Interesting that October obviously coincided with that pandemic, that 201 event too, very closely. But the article says the risk of human extinction has never been higher, and New Zealand, Australia and Iceland would be 3 best places from which to rebuild society, according to the study, which ranked 20 island nations that could serve as refuges. And I was thinking, man, doesn't that just sound like the elites planned the Georgia Guidestones and all of that? Stuff,
Sometimes I wonder if it's planned or if it's certainly, I think it's in a situation where I don't think it's really within anyone's control at the moment.
No.
I just don't see that happening. And was it done intentionally? I really don't know at this point. I can only deal with the reality that I live in. And
look, even if they had done it intentionally, they couldn't control it now anyway. Whether it was intentional or not, they will have lost control.
Well, that's the same. That's like the coronavirus itself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dispute. Was it an intentional release? Was it a bioweapon?
Yeah.
Was it a bioweapon that was unintentional, or was it just sort of a natural mutation? I think, if I sit down and analyze it, that if somebody was doing this intentionally, they're out of their mind. It's because you can't, once this thing gets out, you can't control where it goes. I mean, we talk about the elites and everything. So I don't know if you know this or not. There was I think the Brazilian president met with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago down in Florida last week. And there's a picture there. You can find it very easily on Twitter. Just look for Brazil press minister, a picture of the Brazil press minister taken Saturday holding a hat, with Donald Trump holding a hat and Mike Pence holding a hat. The 3 of them in the same picture. Says "Make Brazil Great Again" was the printing on the hat. And now the press minister, who was standing there next to the president and the vice president, has tested positive for the coronavirus. So the point is that listen, it's everybody probably ought to plan on being exposed to this thing. So, take your vitamin C, take your whatever you think you need to take to get your immune system built up, get plenty of rest. We decided today that we'll probably record our Bible teachings at church on Sunday, but that's probably all we're going to do. We're not going to have a regular service because, we have a lot of older people in the congregation. We have some people that are under treatment for cancer and that type of thing. And we're pretty much, I think you just need to stay away from other people if you're in those categories at the present.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens to these large churches now that meet with, and all their tithers that keep them going with these prosperity gospel messages and all of that best life now type of stuff. What's going to happen to them now?
I don't know if I had a picture of it at the beginning of my prophecy update that I did last Sunday at church, and it was a picture of one of those electronic signs that runs on its own little diesel fuel or gas fuel, saying healing rooms closed outside of Bethel Church in Reading. Yeah. And they had on their website that the healing rooms are closed for the time being. So it's sort of like, the problem I always had with the faith healing is it's like, why do you have a rally here? Why don't you just go down to the hospital?
Yeah.
And heal people? And it's my mother fell. There was a buffet with Ernest Angley's thing up in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, and she went up to the buffet and she came out and she fell and did a face plant. And she looked like somebody hit her in the face with a baseball bat. And Ernest Angley Ministries paid for her medical care, to get her through the doctor's appointments that she had after that. And I'm like, why didn't he just walk across the street and, bop you on the head and heal you? Didn't really make any sense to me. It was the guy was, he's still going. He had to mothball his 747. He actually had a 747.
Wow.
Actually had a 747.
So that's a big plane, yeah.
That's a big plane,
yeah.
Even Trump didn't have a 747.
Yeah.
And he's a minister, so.
I think there's going to be a lot of blood on the church's shoulders for those that should have seen this coming and warned people. Instead, they've been preaching this false message, and now they're going to be showing up. And they've mocked people like us who've been warning people all this time, John. And, like I've seen it many times. And now those people, what are they going to do if they can't meet in their mega churches and if their tithes start falling away?
I mean, I'll give you an example. I like social media, but there are times where it's a big drag. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. So last night I posted a post on my Facebook page and I said, the NBA has suspended its season. And immediately I have a number of people jumping down my throat. You're a fearmonger. You're causing panic. And I'm like, what are you talking about? The NBA did shut down and suspend for the season.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. Deal with it. It doesn't mean I'm running, down the hall, pulling my hair out or anything like that. And so what I don't like and what I would kind of encourage everybody to do is, dial back the rhetoric a little bit. Because everybody's in sort of a different place on this right now. We're clearly not all on the same page. And let's see how this thing plays out over the next few weeks and month. And if it's nothing, then praise the Lord. Let's get back to life. But we also have to acknowledge that the economic disruption right now has been at least as great, if not greater, than the health fallout from the coronavirus itself, the contagion into the economy. And I don't see that recovering very quickly at all. You just can't start and stop this.
I totally agree. Yeah. Regardless of what happens to the coronavirus. Yeah.
I mean, look, I remember when I was a kid in North Canton, Ohio, we would go to the store in the winter. And there was a little place where you could watch cartoons, but you had to walk past the vegetable aisle. And so Fisher Foods on Cleveland Avenue at 44th Street in North Canton. And I remember in the winter, you'd see not much in the way of produce in that aisle in the winter. Now, here in Columbus, Ohio, there's like this unbelievable array of vegetables, fruits. I mean, things that when I was a kid, I didn't even know existed. And they're all there and they're fairly fresh. And so we have this supply system that it's it's almost a miracle to me. I'm amazed at it, how it works. Well, now that's been disrupted, and who knows when or if it's ever coming back to be the same. I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I mean, I just have to deal with it. I'm not panicked. But, in the Old Testament, there's a very good example. I think I mentioned this Sunday also. Ahab and King Josiah. They're talking about going to war, and Josiah wanted to know, do you have any prophets? And Ahab says, well, yeah, I got this. Everybody was telling Josiah, oh, yeah, go ahead. There were like 400 prophets. Go ahead. You'll be great. You'll have a great victory and all this stuff. And then he said, well, don't you have anybody else? And he goes, yeah, I bet this other guy is Micaiah, but man, he hates me, Ahab said, because he always gives me bad news. And Micaiah came and gave the truth eventually to the king, which he didn't take his advice. But it was pretty interesting there, because in that story, there were 400 false prophets and one real one. And I think that's probably the ratio that applies. At least that ratio applies today at a minimum, that you'll find 400 false prophets for every true one. And as much as people hated Jeremiah, they didn't like him at all. They treated him horribly, but Jeremiah was right. And I think that we're at a point where we need Jeremiahs, and we need to pay attention to them. And they're not doing this because they get joy out of giving people the bad news about the reality that they live in, but they're doing what God has empowered them to do, and that's to tell the truth and speak truth to power.
Totally agree. Yes, absolutely. So what would you tell people listening? I think, John, it would be really good if you could pray for our listeners, but before doing that, maybe what would you advise people that are listening now to do? Because obviously there will be people in all different sorts of positions.
Well, I think that the best practical advice I could give you is don't panic, but you need to take reasonable steps to prepare yourselves. And I think you need to keep an open mind as to how these things are going to play out. If someone's telling you everything's going to be okay in a week, I just think that that's probably a voice that's not good for you to listen to. By the same token, I don't know that a voice that's saying it's the end of the world is necessarily the thing. I would try to arm yourself with the facts, see what the markets are doing, make sure you have staples and everything to prepare. And if you have the abundance to do it, have enough to share with people for the next couple of months. Because I think I just see that happening. And whether the politicians are right or not, the fact of the matter is, this is the reality that we're living in. They're shutting down all the major sporting things in the United States. This is a huge, huge deal. And I don't think people would do this. It's hard for me to get my head around the fact that they would just do this because they're afraid as to what's going to happen. So I think people need to, I would encourage people to read the Psalms, read Proverbs, spend time in prayer, maybe spend time in fasting and prayer, because I think that a solid spiritual life, looking at the promises of God as to how this thing ultimately works out, is a good advice. If you're not right with the Lord, you need to get your act together today. The time is ripe. If you've never accepted Jesus Christ as the Messiah who came, lived the perfect life, was crucified on the cross for your sins, was crucified, died, buried, rose again on the third day, ascended to heaven, and is coming back. If you're not on board with that, you need to get around people that will help you to learn the truth and the reality of the gospel of Jesus Christ, because we don't know what's going to happen. Do you think Tom Hanks and his wife went to Australia thinking they were going to end up with a disease that could kill them? Maybe it won't. But, if he's a type 2 diabetic, if it's a 10% chance. So I think people need to get in the Word, Try to find some online fellowship with other believers. There's a lot of Facebook groups and other things where you can do that. There are churches. I know Fellowship Bible Chapel will be streaming some messages and prophecy updates as much as we can on our YouTube and other media outlets for the foreseeable future. So it's we know how this all works out in the end. And believers need to rest in the truth of what they really believe and not come unhinged. Because I think we need to pray that God would be glorified in everything we do. So can we just pray right now?
Absolutely.
Okay. Father, we just pray that in the midst of a very tumultuous world, that you would keep us anchored in the truth of the Word of God, the hope that exists only in Jesus Christ, and the truth of the glorious gospel that he came to earth, lived a perfect life, died for our sins, was buried, rose again, ascended to heaven, and is coming back again someday, perhaps very soon, to set this all right. Help us to keep that tightly in our grip, the hope that we have, but also give us an opportunity to share that hope with other people. I would also pray that you would give us wisdom as to how to act, where to go, what to do, what to buy, what to share with others, and just pray that through all of this, that you would be glorified. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. That's a great prayer and a great wrap up. John, who knows what the next time it'll be when we talk, what things will be like. It's changing so rapidly. But
I think we talked about the coronavirus for a little bit of time the last time at the end of January, but that seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but as I look at things day to day, sometimes I turn to my wife and I say, that happened like a year ago, right? No, she goes, no, that happened last week.
Yeah.
Because there's just this crush of events. And I think that's what the Bible prophesies it'll be. There will be an acceleration and convergence of things in the end times that'll be a little bit hard to wrap your head around at times. And I'll admit, I'm there sometimes. I just have to shake my head. But God is faithful, and I think He'll get us through all of this. I know He will get us through all of this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again for being on the Minute to Midnight show. And don't forget, folks, to check out John's channel, YouTube channel, Fellowship Bible Chapel, and, of course, the Minute to Midnight channel. So thanks, John, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up again soon.
Okay, God bless. Thanks.
Folks, remember to give this a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel and our iTunes channel, and also make sure to follow the A Minute to Midnight website. All of our stuff goes on the A Minute to Midnight website, and you can get notifications of all new posts if you enter your email. On the right hand side of the page it says follow this blog by email. Just do that if you want to get notified. Who knows what sort of freedoms and clampdown on freedoms we will have on social media. So I'm encouraging people now to follow our website and even join the forum on our website if you want to do that. A Minute to Midnight is run 100% by donations, and I know things are tough for everyone, but if you can spare some money to donate to keep A Minute to Midnight running, that would be greatly appreciated. I do definitely want us to keep this show running as long as possible, and that can only be done with your support. So thank you to the folks that do donate, and if you're able to help, that would be much appreciated, and you can do that at the A Minute to Midnight website. Also, the music used in the shows is stuff I have written, played and recorded as well, and there's free music on the website you can download too. Well, folks, who knows what will be happening in the days ahead, but God bless, have a great week and stay safe.